out the counters in between here and there, and that means you can buy all the books, and then they will go and sign them and sneak around. It'll be perfect. So I'm Rosie. I'm actually one of the owners of the store now, so very exciting. Thank you. It's tricky because for 10 years I've just said I'm the events coordinator, and then I can just do an introduction and it's fine. And now it's like, no, I have to change this one thing. So one of the things I think about a lot with Sonoma is how much everybody appreciates where we are. And that's not just the town, it's not just the wine, it's what is around us, what nature is here. And one of the things I hear a lot about is the birds that are here. Admittedly, I've kind of seen a pattern, which my mom follows, where you retire and then you start telling me a lot about birds. And I go, okay, that's great. And it's a lovely, lovely hobby to have because it makes every walk special. It makes every going outside special because you can look at what I see as this little fluttery thing in the corner making little noises and tell me exactly what it is. Personally, I don't remember it, but I'm looking forward to about 40 years from now, I'll be able to go like, okay, it's my turn. I'm going to look at these birds. And the thing about Hannah and Dick is that they are the ones who are able to do that all they want, no matter what. Hannah is obviously not retired age. For Dick, this is an amazing second career, in my opinion. He did 55 years in the global metal industry, and I was like, okay, what's that? And it turns out it has nothing to do with birds. So having this joy of nature and having this sense of where we are, what's important about where we are, is the center to this book. Just one other thing, this is our very, very first time using any projector of any sort. You can tell because I'm standing in it. So if there are problems, please forgive us. It's growing pains going on here. All that said, if you guys can give Hannah and Dick a big round of applause.
Rosie, you might want to drop the lights. Good.
You guys ready?
Okay.
Let me fast forward to
All right. Well, you can hear me anyway. You can't see me. So thank you all for coming. We very much appreciate it, and we hope you enjoy it. And we'll have a little time for Q&A as well. I should mention this is also Hannah's home bookstore. I guess when she was growing up as a child, this was where she used to come. So it has deep emotional ties for her.
I used to go to the one across the street.
Okay. So would like to start the talk off with a little trailer. I don't know if any of you have seen it. It is on our website. We have a website for the book itself, which, by the way, has another 1,000 photos on it if you don't get enough tonight, as well as the event listing and the trailers and so on. So why don't we see if it works with the trailer.
Northern California is known for its redwoods, its wild coast, and the art and innovation that enliven our Bay Area cities. But this is also one of the richest regions in the country for birds. More than half the continent's bird species have been recorded right here, drawn by the region's diverse habitats, its Mediterranean climate, and its location along the Pacific Flyway, a major route for millions of migrating birds. My name is Hannah Hindley, and I've spent years guiding others through remote wildernesses. In the early uncertain days of the pandemic, I found myself back home in the Bay Area, walking long distances to make sense of a world turned upside down. At the same time, south of me in San Francisco, photographer Dick Evans was doing the same with his camera in hand. We didn't know each other yet, but we were both being pulled toward the wildness right outside our doors. Our paths were separate but parallel, and when they finally crossed, a book began to take flight. This book is your invitation into that world. From the mysterious Farallone Islands to hidden sloughs and oak-covered ridges, join us in exploring more than 50 remarkable birding sites, all within a stone's throw of San Francisco. Whether you're new to the region or you've explored these trails for years, this is a colorful way to see this bird-rich place with new eyes. You'll meet birds as you've never seen them, vivid, wild, and full of character, Ridgway's rails in ancient marshes, sandhill cranes dancing in flooded delta fields, Brandt's cormorants nesting on the infamous rocky shores of Alcatraz. Together, captured in over 200 photographs, the birds and the landscapes tell a visual story as vibrant as the region itself. You'll also hear from the people who know the birds of the bay the best. Biologists, guides, and conservationists, including experts from Point Blue Conservation Science. Their insights unlock the deeper stories, migration patterns, California's geologic origins, and the human work behind conservation. All proceeds from the book go directly to Point Blue and to nonprofit publisher Heyday to support their missions here in the Bay Area and beyond. This is your book to own, your window into the wild heart of the Bay. Share it, savor it. Let it shift how you see this remarkable place and the birds who call it home.
Okay, that's the trailer. You may have noticed it mentioned it's a nonprofit project, basically. We're doing it for the benefit of Point Blue, which is a tremendous nonprofit bird conservancy headquartered in Petaluma. And we have Christine Walker, who has been one of our main contacts for Point Blue, who's going to speak a little bit as well as Hannah and I. So the first question we typically get is, how did you decide to do a book? How did you get together? How did Hannah and I get together? So we thought we'd answer that question up front. I had done 3 books previously, all on neighborhoods of San Francisco, where we live. I'd done one on Haight-Ashbury, and only because our oldest daughter owns a bookstore in Haight-Ashbury. So that got me interested in Haight-Ashbury. After that one, I did one on the Mission District and the muralists and the murals and the history of the Mission District. And for that one, I partnered with Persida Eyes. I don't know if anybody has ever heard of them. They're a muralist organization run by a woman named Susan Cervantes, who is a quite well-known muralist herself. And they support the muralists in the Mission District. They sell paints, they sell canvases, all kinds of material. They lobby for murals to protect them so that they don't get torn down and defaced. So they were the beneficiary of the book on the mission, which naturally had a lot about murals. The next book I did was Chinatown, and for that one I partnered with the Chinese Culture Center, and they were the beneficiary, and they supplied a lot of inside input on what to photograph, who to interview, all of those things. So I was thinking about doing a 4th neighborhood in San Francisco, and then the pandemic hit. And of course you couldn't do anything, in buildings, or nobody wanted to even get close to you. If you met somebody on the sidewalk, they'd walk out into the street to get around you. It was that kind of atmosphere. So my wife and I started doing hikes, outdoor hikes, and we live right near Crissy Field. So we started hiking there. We noticed there's a lot of birds in Crissy Field as we were hiking. And then we started expanding and going a little further north, a little further south. And again, we were outside, and so we were seeing a lot of birds. And in fact, during the pandemic, there were fewer people, and I think the birds sort of took the space that the people abandoned. So after a year and a half or so of this, I decided, well, who knows when it's going to end, and birds are at least as interesting as neighborhoods, so why don't I consider a book on birds? So first thing I looked for was a partner, someone who had technical expertise and who could also benefit. So a nonprofit partner, and that's where Point Blue cropped up as quite a significant bird conservancy organization with 175 scientists working on bird conservation, and very willing and eager to participate and be my partner. I went back to the publisher of the prior two books, Heyday in Berkeley, who are wonderful nonprofit publishers that specialize in Northern California. So this was right up their alley. They were very interested. And then I said, what I really need is a super writer, journalist, researcher who can really put some meat to the bones of these pictures through research and through writing. And Hannah was recommended by Heyday. They had met her, and it turned out to be a perfect fit. So I'm going to hand it over to Hannah to explain how she got involved.
Thanks, Dick. Yeah. I guess like Dick mentioned a little earlier, this is my hometown bookstore. And I grew up in Glen Ellen. I live in Berkeley now, and make it back to Glen Ellen pretty often for family. But in the intervening time, I have spent a lot of my career leading a secret second life as a wilderness guide, really far from here. I spent over a decade guiding wilderness trips in Alaska. These are some pictures from my time up there, mostly in the summer. Which, how many of you have traveled to Southeast Alaska or other parts of Alaska? Yeah, you know how wild and beautiful it is, and what a big piece of your heart it holds once you've traveled there. And then I would spend my winters guiding mostly in the Sea of Cortez, down in Mexico, which is, for any of you who have traveled there, I'd say a comparable wilderness to Alaska, maybe a little more off the radar, but wild ocean and islands and bird life and marine life. And so you can imagine when the pandemic hit and my guiding work dried up, and I came home to be closer to family, that having spent all this time in these wild places, it felt a little bit oppressive and disappointing to find myself back in my hometown. Until I started going on walks with my mom, who's here tonight. Oops, is that gonna click? And the more we explored our neighborhoods and the old trails that I spent time on as a kid, the more I began to recognize really familiar faces of birds that I knew really well from my time guiding in these other wilderness areas. So these are all Dick's photographs here of a hermit thrush and a greater yellowlegs and this tiny little rufous hummingbird that I would see every summer in Alaska, and then flies on those fast little wings all the way down here to the Bay Area, to our backyards. And the same was true for birds that I knew from the Sea of Cortez. How many of you have witnessed the terns out on the coast here, migrating up and down, especially in the fall? We see big flocks of them. 90% of all of the elegant terns that we see on our coast are on their way south to a single island in the Sea of Cortez, where they'll nest in the winters. And so I began to really appreciate that we live at this global crossroads, right? Not just a place that birds pass through, but a place that birds funnel through. If you were to look at a map of all of those different migration paths, birds are arriving from all of these far-flung, scattered places in the north and bottlenecking here right in the Bay Area, and then spreading back out again south and vice versa on their way back north again on these long migrations. So really special global crossroads that we live at. And also, I would argue, a very wild place if we know where to look. This is one of my favorite pictures from the book, and it was taken about 100 yards from where I was born, in my home in Glen Ellen. Our neighbors across the street had a nest of fledgling screech owls, and Dick captured this incredible shot. So you don't need to go far from home, it turns out, to step foot in really vast wildernesses. So that's a little bit about the origins of the book and my background, which left me so primed to say yes to this project when Heyday and Dick approached me about it, because I had already been busy falling in love with the birds, and this was such a perfect project for channeling that newfound love.
But I'm going to hand it back to Dick here so that we can get some glimpses into the beautiful photos in the book and some of the stories behind them.
And incidentally, when that screech owl photo was taken, I had not met Hannah yet and had no idea she grew up 100 yards from there.
It's a small world.
We had gotten a tip that there was some fledgling screech owls and had gone there and taken that photo. So I'll talk a little bit about making the book from a photography standpoint. And if you do have any questions that you think you might forget by the time we get to the end, just shout it out. Because sometimes there are questions and if you wait, you forget it. I'm going to go through a few of the photos just to give you some numbers. When we started laying out the book, we had 20,000 photographs. Those were the good ones, the ones that I kept. So we had 20,000, we had 180 species that we'd amassed over a year or two. And naturally, when you get to a book, you're confined by the space. So you have to really be critical and decide what you want to put in it. So one thing that we wanted in the book was not going to be a field guide. There are a lot of very good field guides out there. We wanted it to be more of a celebration of the birds that come through here. So there are a number of shots that are sort of portraits of birds. And then there are some of birds doing some unusual things as well. So this first one is a Townsend's warbler. Probably a good number of you recognize it. Really striking bird, particularly if you can catch it like this with the dark background there and you see the coloration very distinctly. Here is a ring-necked duck. And can you see the ring on its neck? If you can, you have very good eyes. Because it's hard to see. It's just a real light, rusty red, orange ring on their neck. On the other hand, the beak has got a very distinct ring on it. I've seen several people that have said, why didn't they call it a ring-beaked duck? And besides, the female has a ring beak as well as the male. Only the male has a ring neck. So maybe one day we'll get it renamed the ring-beaked duck. This is a common red-winged blackbird, but sort of an uncommon pose. He's wearing his red shoulders there, almost like epaulets, looks like. Which is maybe appropriate because it was, I think I took it at Hamilton Wetlands, which is an old Air Force base, right? Here is, I think, one of the more beautiful birds. You can see that this was taken right at sunset, so real low light. You can see the light shining through those long feathers, which was almost its demise. You may know they were nearly driven to extinction about 100 years ago because those feathers made wonderful hats for women, and they really craved them. Fortunately, they weren't, so they were saved. Now they're fairly popular, which is great. So you have no trouble finding great white egrets now. Here's one that is a little harder to see. Does anyone know what this is? It's a Ridgway's rail. You might have heard of them. They're a not endangered but threatened species, so they are somewhat under threat, and there's concerns about them. They live exclusively in salt marshes, so all along the estuary, but they live in that pickleweed that you see surrounding them here, and they like to stay right down in that pickleweed. And you might hear them, but you very seldom see them. I got a very useful tip from Christine, in fact, from Point Blue. We had made a couple outings trying to see these rails unsuccessfully. And she called me up at 9 o'clock on a Friday night and said, tomorrow's a king tide. And I said, yeah, it's also rainy and cold out there. And she said, but, if you want to go, I'll meet you there at the certain marsh, and maybe we'll see some which-way rails. So I thought, well, give it a try. So we showed up about 8 o'clock. I think high tide was maybe 9 or something that morning, and walked out one of the high dikes in this salt marsh near Corte Madera. And what happens with the king tides is all of that lowland floods. The dikes are high enough, they don't flood, but the water gets within a couple feet of the dikes. And the dikes narrow down to 10 or 20 feet wide. So even though there's pickle grass there, they can't hide too much from you. And we walked down this dike, and about halfway down we saw a bird jump out of the pickleweed and fly away. And it looked like what we had seen pictures of a rail. My first reaction was, shoot, the one rail we're going to see, and I missed it. But a few steps further, we saw some rustling in the pickleweed, and we saw one. And then we went on, and that morning I think we saw 15 which-way rails. And I got about 100 pictures, I think, of those. So this is one picture, as you can see. They can swim. This one jumped in the water, and you can see a couple of them swam over to some other higher ground, but they don't, and they fly, of course, but they don't like to fly and they don't like to swim. They like to just hunker down and play invisible and hope you walk right by them. So even if they see you and you see them, they will allow you to go by. Incidentally, Sunday, I went out with my wife because there was a high tide, king tide, and she had never seen these. I took her out there and we saw 5 or 6, and it was sunny and 65 degrees. This is a colorful little guy, hooded merganser, male. One of my favorites to photograph. They're very photogenic, as you can see. And the male, of course, like most birds, is more colorful. The female's a bit drabber, as is typical in ducks, because the female has to sit on the eggs and play invisible. By the way, that's not true for all birds. There are a few in which the male sits on the eggs, in which case he tends to be the drab one and the female is more colorful. And the phalarope, this pelagic phalarope is one of those. Here's a female hooded merganser, and she's got a little attitude too, I think. And her hair, my wife isn't here, but her hair is a direct match. So she's adopted the female hooded merganser as her spirit bird. Here's a bird that usually is thought of as sort of a dull gray bird, a starling, an invasive species, although they've been in Americas for 200 years. But if they're in the bright sunlight, you get this iridescence on them. And you get iridescence on quite a few different birds. Probably the one you think of most is the hummingbird. But many birds show iridescence. And the difference between iridescence and pigment is that the iridescence comes from tiny feather particles that act as prisms, basically. So you're getting basically a breakdown of the light with all of these tiny prisms, which gives you this iridescent impact. Here's one that was not too happy with me. He had a little stash of peanuts that he had gotten in Golden Gate Park, and I was getting a little too close to his peanuts. You can see he was giving me a death stare there. This is about 20, 25 feet away, so it's not like I was 1 foot from him. But with telephoto lens, you get the impact as if you're right there. It's a brewer's blackbird, by the way. These next two are as a sequence I like. This is, of course, a snowy egret, so the small white egrets. They're very plentiful now. You see that a lot of them, they've really done well in Napa, not Napa, I'm sorry, Marin and Sonoma counties. So you see quite a few of these. They're much smaller, of course, they're about 18 inches, 20 inches tall. But I was trying to get a good shot where you could see the head, the beak, the eye, the coloration around the eye. And you can see that very clear here. But then all of a sudden we got a puff of wind and his head exploded. Which I didn't realize I'd captured till I got home and was going through the pictures. Here's the one on the right is being chased by the others. Can you see why? He got the worm. He found the worm, and they're chasing him to get him to drop the worm, so that they can all grab it. He didn't. He kept going. Here's one that caught something bigger than a worm. It's a great blue heron, and he caught himself a full-size sole, which is like 12 or 14 inches around. And he was trying to figure out how to swallow that sole whole, right? And the heron typically will flip the fish around and take them head first down, so that they slip down easily. And they can take a pretty big fish, fish that's 3-4 inches around, but not a 14-inch sole. And he was trying every technique he could think of to try to get that sole down, and his neck would bulge way out, but it wasn't going down. And I took a number of photographs, probably for 30 minutes, and then left he and the sole, who was still alive and still flapping. Here is a woodpecker. Any guess what kind of woodpecker?
Acorn.
Yeah, you see all the acorns there? And they stash the acorns, of course, in October for the winter. And typically they would stash them in dead trees. But this little flock, a clan of acorn woodpeckers, they typically live in sort of clans of 20 or so. They had taken over an old log cabin barn up on the foothills of Mount Tamalpais. I think it's Phoenix Lake, if you've ever been up there. They had taken this barn over and made it their granary. And they had all these perfect logs that they could just peck the holes in and then insert the acorns. But what I found really interesting is they only put acorns in vertical poles. They didn't put any in horizontal. And I'm sure it's because they're conditioned that dead trees standing straight up are the safe place to put your acorns. And if it's laying flat, it's probably on the ground and it's going to be accessible by predators. Speaking of hummingbirds, here's a hummingbird. And several people have asked what's different between doing a book on Chinatown or the Mission and doing a book on birds. And I said the big difference is birds are much smaller than people or buildings, and they move a whole lot faster. The Mission Dolores probably hasn't moved in 300 years. But the hummingbird flaps his wings at a pretty high speed. And I'd like to ask anyone guess how fast his wings go? His or her wings? Take a guess. Nobody's even going to guess that. How much? 100 per minute. It's about 60 a second. A second. So whatever that is, 60, yeah, per minute. And when I was photographing architecture and people for the Chinatown Mission books, I would often use a shutter speed of 1/60th of a second, because that gives you good depth of field and good color saturation. If I shot this hummingbird at 1/60th of a second, what you would see is a beak and an eye, and then a tail, And in between, you'd see one big blur. Because if you think of it, if he's going 60 times a second, that wing would have gone from the top all the way down, all the way back up in that one shutter speed. This one was shot, I think, at 1/3000th of a second. And for most birds in flight, you have to be shooting above 1/2000th at least to get freeze the action. There's a few birds that flap a little slower than that. This is a great white egret again, and if you ever watch them, they go about like this, right? 1 or 2 times a second. So they're a great starter bird for bird flight photography. Sometimes I didn't want to get frozen picture, I wanted to have some motion. So in this case, this is still, I think, 1/80th of a second or something like that. But you can see the movement in the avocet's wings here. Here's a picture of a small flock of birds taken at Rodeo Beach on the Marin Headlands, not too far from here. How many would you guess are in this flock? No harm for being wrong.
You could say that one again, I think I heard it. Half a million?
500,000. That's
Good, yeah.
right. Yeah. Well, I counted on the scientists and the research to fill it in, but they travel in flocks of like 500,000 to 1 million around the Pacific Ocean. They happened to be coming by Rodeo Beach and stayed for a couple days there. They're sooty shearwaters, but it's phenomenal to see somewhere between 500,000 and 1 million birds all in one flock. So I think with that one, I'll hand it off to Hannah to talk a little bit about the research and the interviewing and the writing.
Thanks, Dick. Yes. This book was really fun to write the text for because I'm a nerd. And I love research, and all different kinds of research went into this project. But I'd say the most exciting research were our field expeditions, where Dick and myself, and often Christine, would get to go out into the field kind of behind the scenes and learn from biologists and conservationists about the work they're doing here, and learn their stories about birds, learn stories from the birds themselves sometimes, and we got to go to some pretty fun places, including this is the subterranean special collections at the California Academy of Sciences, where they have this vast library of dead birds, which are really valuable, it turns out, because these bodies can give us information about how our region has changed over time, over 100 years, when we go back in and compare birds and look at DNA and so forth. And this is another one of our expeditions to Alcatraz Island. We did not go for the typical reason that tourists go to Alcatraz, but it turns out Alcatraz has the largest publicly accessible breeding colony of Brandt's cormorants anywhere in the state. So if it's been a while since you've been to Alcatraz, I would invite you to return with new eyes. But I thought that maybe the most enticing way to invite you in on some of these field excursions that we got to go on to bring this book to life would be to invite you on a little journey of the imagination. Are you up for joining for a small journey of the imagination? What that means is, I thought I would share just a handful of some of the opening passages to some of the essays that are braided. Oh, yes, thank you, Dick. That's great.
Usually it's a little lighter than...
That's true. Let's see. And I won't introduce the essays. Oh, I got it. Thank you. But I'll let you piece together the places that we're exploring here.
You can stand in the way.
As we go. Wow, teamwork. This is really exemplary. That's
Only
pretty much-
because it's your home bookstore.
Yeah, this is great. Special treatment for one day. The salty lady tilts atop big oceanic swells, then pitches down each trough like a marble on a run. A pink-footed shearwater skims low across the rolling surface. A tufted puffin whirs ahead of the boat, feet splayed behind. 5 minutes out, our captain tells us over the loudspeaker. But ahead, there is only ocean and a wall of fog. Gradually, a white line of surf materializes, where the sea breaks against unseen land. Then, out of the fog, near and sudden, rise the sharp cliffs of the Farallone Islands, the Devil's Teeth. A similar scene likely greeted Doc Robinson when he ventured 25 miles offshore from San Francisco in 1849. He filled his boat with the common myrrh eggs that he found there, and the fortune he made selling the eggs from that single run was enough to start his own pharmacy in the city. Soon the Pacific Egg Company claimed exclusive rights to collecting Farallone eggs. The company's eggers donned boots with rope soles for gripping the steep cliffs. They smashed every egg they could find, mottled green shells crushed among crimson yolks, so that when they returned, they could ensure that the eggs they collected were fresh. In this way, they plundered 500,000 eggs a year, paring the myrrh population from 400,000 to just 6,000 birds. When competitors arrived to challenge the Pacific Egg Company's lucrative claim on the island, both sides took up arms. The Egg War of 1863 left 4 men injured and 1 dead, shot through the stomach. Now the island resounds not with gunfire, but with the shouting of birds and the occasional whine of a crane as it lifts the small boat that runs between the island and the larger resupply boat. This is how we arrive, raised in a skiff like a basket on a pulley. There are no docks on the sea-scoured Farallones. In early May, I sit on my patio in Berkeley and watch the stars come out. The sun set long ago, and the neighbors' brugmansia blossoms are opening in the night and unspooling their lemony fragrance over fences and into open windows all down the block. I've stayed outside long past dark, engrossed in a writing project, my laptop like a lamp in the night. And then I hear it. At first I barely notice it, being so accustomed to the everyday background chatter of birds in the neighborhood. Then I sit up. I close my laptop and listen. Above me in the darkness, birds are calling. As I tune my ears, it's clear that I haven't heard just an idle chirp from a confused bird out past its bedtime. The whole night is alive with soft, sharp little calls, like chimes in a dark breeze. I turn my face to the sky, but I can make out no movement. Unseen, a river of birds passes above me, and I am adrift in the current, listening. On any given night during spring and fall migration seasons, as neighborhoods sleep, hundreds of thousands of birds will take wing on their seasonal journeys, navigating above increasingly complex landscapes illuminated by city lights and punctuated by skyscrapers. Over the course of the spring, more than 1 billion birds pass through California, and 80% of them do it under cover of darkness. A bird in the hand is warm and small, with a swift heartbeat that can be felt in the palm. Sarah Needles holds a Wilson's warbler with its neck tucked gently between two knuckles. She blows briskly against its belly, revealing a tissue-thin pink layer of bare skin with warm blood pumping under it. This is the brood patch, where the bird has been warming her chicks. It identifies the bird as female. This, along with 15 other data points from wingspan to weight, is logged in a field notebook. Sarah crimps a lightweight aluminum band, engraved with a unique federal number, on the bird's leg and sets her loose to return to her nest. The Pine Gulch study site is a bit like a fairy tale castle. Every dawn, it appears amid the fog and bulrushes, and by midday, it has vanished again. Point Blue conservation science apprentices like Sarah arrive at daybreak to rig diaphanous nets between tall poles and to lay out pliers, rulers, scales, and magnifying visors across a makeshift table. Radios crackling, they take turns walking circuits between their nets, brushing past minty sweet arroyo willows on the narrow trails bordering Bolinas Lagoon. The nets, nearly invisible in the drenching green shadows of alder and box elder, gently capture flying birds. Apprentices tease them from the thread-like weave with practiced fingers and tuck them, wiggling, into cotton bags to carry back for measurements. In this way, every bird netted at the field site is identified, each becoming a distinct character in an unfolding story about distant migrants, local birds, and the space they share here at the edge of the continent. I think that last one is a good segue. That last story was from the Palamarin Field Station out in Bolinas. Have any of you visited? I highly encourage you to. It's open to the public, and it's incredible. You can go and see the birds being netted and banded and chat with the scientists out there. And Palamarin Field Station has been in operation as long as Point Blue Conservation Science has been. For 60 continuous years, they've been learning the stories from the birds and cataloging them every day. And we were lucky to gain insight into some of those stories, thanks in huge part to Christine Walker, who was our bird guru during the research portion of this. Was there a question? Yeah.
So I've been on more than a few wilderness hikes in Alaska and other parts of the world. I don't remember the leaders of those hikes being able to write so beautifully. How did you hone that craft?
Thank you. You'd be surprised how many wilderness guides have secret talents. But science and writing have both been a really big part of my background. I had dual degrees when I was an undergrad in biology and English, and I think that guiding is storytelling just in person rather than on paper, is my belief. But I want to hand this over to Christine to share just a couple of stories from her time working with Point Blue, which, like Dick had mentioned, is the recipient of all the proceeds from this book. So we wanted you to learn a little more from the guru herself.
Oh, gosh. Okay, thanks.
Well, thank you so much, and gosh, it's been such a privilege to work with you both over these last 2 years. I've been not the guru herself, but just a facilitator, and I've been able to connect them with our biologists out in the field, and it's been a joy, and I can see through that process that it's a labor of love, and that's evident in the stories that you've heard and more that are available in the book and the beautiful photos. So it's just been a joy, and it's evident in the fact that these proceeds are coming back to us to help us continue the work. So thank you both, and thank you all for coming tonight. Oopsies, that's here we go. And that way, not that way.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sometimes it's a little.
Oops, went too far.
Going below it.
Okay. There we go. I love this quote from Hannah in the book: "To watch birds is to meet space and time and wrapped in feathers." And that's basically our raison d'être. And my French is horrible, but our reason for being at Point Blue Conservation Science, in less poetic terms, birds are sentinel species or indicator species, telling us the larger stories about the health of our environment. And how many of you know about Point Blue? Oh, great. Oh, great. For those that don't, I just thought I'd give you a sprint through our history so that you can, know your neighbor town down in Petaluma, or your hometown organization here. And this is, I was going to try to be clever and do this as a series, but I'm going to go ahead and bring them all up here. Oh, no, that's okay. Well, maybe I can just, let's see. Maybe I can just actually stand by the computer and go ahead and click it forward like that. Does that work? Yeah. Oh, not that one? Oh, yep. Okay, so we started, as Hannah said, in 1965 and 1966 and established the Palmerton Field Station, which you can visit, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. And no surprise, right? We started studying the birds of Point Reyes, and we studied specifically land and songbirds at the Palmerton Field Station. As Hannah pointed out, though, that is a convergence. The whole Bay Area is a convergence of birds. So especially that point of Point Reyes that sticks right out into the Pacific Ocean. And so very, very quickly we needed to understand the birds of Point Reyes. We needed to study the birds beyond Point Reyes. And not only song and land birds, but we established the Farallon Islands Field Station in 1968 to study seabirds there. And that's a really neat fun fact that we've been cooperating with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife out there for the longest public-private partnership in the United States. So they're our partners, and some conservation wins we've had out there are seeing a resurgence of the seabirds and also fur seals. And we were able to expand the marine protected area around the islands. We were able to ban gillnet fishing. We were able to ban hunting on white sharks, which converge in the area, as well as the birds. And we were able to reduce whale ship strikes by 80% in the bay. So those are some significant wins that we've had. And as you can imagine, it's happening not just in the realm of birds, but in the realm of marine mammals and food webs. So we then went to Antarctica. I have some colleagues there right now studying Adelie penguins and also Antarctic sea ice. So as our evolution continued, we started studying environmental factors beyond birds. And in addition to those two wonderful examples, we set up our Sierra Meadows function, and then our access function, which was a more comprehensive study of the oceans in partnership with the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Association, NOAA. And basically, we have a vessel that goes out in parallels from the coastline, from Mendocino all the way down to Monterey, to collect some of the same information we collect from the islands, but from a boat. So it's a much more comprehensive look at that California current, which is so rich in food and fosters all of the marine and bird life that you see around there. And the Working Lands program was also an extension in order to study the birds on private lands, which is really most of their habitat in California. And so from there, we realized most of the damage that has been done that is causing the bird declines that we see is human caused. So we had to understand social factors a little bit better, and that became a focus of our work as we evolved. And in 2012, we brought the STRAW program in, Students and Teachers Restoring a Watershed, that has now served 75,000 students in 15 counties, teaching them about their watershed in the hope to inspire conservation leaders and good citizens of the future. And we also became an official UN observer and are attending conferences of the parties, COPs, both biodiversity and climate COPs all around the world since 2017, and just last year became a part of the IUCN and participated in the World Conservation Congress. So that's just kind of an oversimplification of our evolution over 60 years to let you know who we are today as Point Blue Conservation Science. And as Dick said, we have about 175 conservation professionals working and about a $30 million budget right over the hill in Petaluma. Come visit us. And that brings us back into the shadow of the bridge and the home, geographical and spiritual home of our hearts, and this book. So I wanted to just reintroduce some of those photos, just a few to talk about our current work and layer on kind of a insight into how we go about protecting these animals. And this, of course, is the ridgeways rail. And, you know, back in the 1800s, we reclaimed most of the ridgeways rail habitat, the marsh, for human use. I think that would look like development in agriculture and infrastructure, oh my, right? And so it's no surprise that as we disturb their habitat, their numbers precipitously decline. What was a surprise, I think, to engineers is that our species also depends on that habitat. And so for the rail and human communities, we're both in the path of accelerating sea level rise. And so they're kind of like the canary in the coal mine. The canary told coal miners that the mine was safe, and the rail, if we can bring their numbers back, will tell us that our low-lying communities are safe. And the data that we've collected on this bird and others in that habitat informed the Measure AA. Do you remember that one back in 2012? We all voted for it. 9 counties, it was really remarkable, voted to tax themselves to kind of reclaim those marshlands. So we're restoring that with the funding that is provided by taxpayers that voted for that measure, and continuing to study these birds and as they respond to the restorations to make sure that we're doing it right. And so, yes, this is just a uniting bird, and you can go to SF Bay State of the Birds to see our most recent report. It's a decadal report. And if you ever go out birding and you think, maybe I'm seeing a few more of these birds or a few less of these birds, that's the place to go to confirm your suspicion. SF Bay State of the Birds, a new report. Sorry. And then the Rentit is kind of our mascot at Palomrin Field Station. And I love Hannah's phrase from the book, hyper-local species. So it has a stubborn quarter-mile range. And not just an individual bird doesn't leave that range, generations of that bird's family does not budge from that range. So as you can imagine, a disruption, say a wildfire, like the crazy ones we've had in Sonoma County over the last decade, would be devastating for a hyper-local species like that. And so Point Blue is out in Bolinas and in Jenner and other places, studying not just how fire affects bird life, but how fire prevention strategies affect it. So the lock and scatter, the prescribed burns, and all of the things we do to prevent catastrophic wildfires, how are those affecting this type of bird, so that we can broadcast that through the entities that do the work, and they can do that with even our pickiest friends in mind. So I love this one. Does anyone know what this bird is? Go for it. This is the American avocet. So I would love to one day have a silk kimono with this on it. This is so beautiful. It just reminds me of something that could be embroidered in silk. But our recent study, shorebird trends, just came out this year, 2026, hot off the presses. Unfortunately, has seen a number of declining species. And this one, we can go out and see it. I could see it any day. I could see it from my office window in Schallenberger Park in Petaluma. But this one has experienced declines of 10% every year for a decade. So over 40,000 birds of this species have disappeared from the Bay Area over that time. And so our next step is to identify specific causes and to address those causes. And we do that along the entire Pacific Flyway with 13 Latin American countries and 50 partner organizations within those. And we've started to re-grant to them now that we have the data to know which interventions will work best. And so we're giving them some money to, do those in their hometowns. That local trend, unfortunately, is happening across the entire continent. And common birds, rare birds, every type of habitat So I hate to be a downer, but I think you probably saw this report out in 2017 called the 3 Billion Birds Report. And we are missing 3 billion birds from the 1970s to 2017. And that represents about 30% of the abundance we once saw. But the good news is that we know from the research we continue to do on the interventions that we introduce is that it's working. So it has a safeguarding effect, both protecting land and restoring land. So as long as we can continue to do that and continue to make sure that we're doing it right through these long-term studies, we can make a difference and bend that bird curve back toward abundance. And I love this picture. Oh, no. Oh, that's okay. Go for it. Yeah. I know the cautionary tale is, of course, Martha, if you remember the passenger pigeon. And they used to say that passenger pigeon would darken the sky so that you couldn't even see the sun. And I love this picture because you can really feel that abundance, what it would sound like and what it would feel like. And so let's keep it that way. And I brought this photo. I know you used it earlier in the slideshow, but I love it. So this, Sarah, Fen, and Larissa all went through the apprentice program at the Palomarin Field Station. So not only is it a long-term study of songbirds and landbirds, but a place where early career scientists can get their start. And so Larissa is now full-time staff with us, and Sarah and Fen have gone off to wonderful other field sites. And they represent one of 3 of 1,500 folks that have come through the program. They live on site, and they wake up at dawn, as Hannah said, and they're tremendous assets to us, and their enthusiasm and the wonderful creativity and the data. And looking at that data, we don't have any idea how useful it'll be to future scientists. So it's a remarkable lineage of knowledge. You can't really know a single bird species or a community in a lifetime. So they are contributing to this wonderful lineage. You can come join us. Please come to join us. You can scan that QR code or just Google Point Blue and Palomarin. And between May and October are the most likely times to catch a bird in the hand and see how they measure it and see how they use that data. And finally, Rachel Carson and her seminal Silent Spring, no accident that was published a few years before our original Point Reyes Bird Observatory was established, and we've done our utmost to make sure that the world is full of birdsong for generations to come. And thank you again for your time and your focus on Point Blue.
Okay, maybe we can turn the lights back on.
We have time for exactly 2 questions.
2 questions,
No
okay,
questions.
exactly 2.
They have to be perfect questions. No questions.
Okay, yes.
So what took the lead? How did you meld your 2 skills in this book? I mean, how did you curate the pictures you were going to use in the book? And did your writing influence what was going to be chosen? How did that work?
They were done in parallel, actually, because we were planning and executing shoots at the same time that Hannah was researching and writing drafts. And, so they were sort of done in parallel. And then we all got together, 3 of us and some others at Heyday, when we tried to boil that down into a book and reduce 20,000 images to 242, I think, and cut Hannah's writing down to very short, crisp nuggets. And it was an iterative process. So we met multiple times in doing that, and it took about 1.5 years.
I would say too, when you open a book, depending on what kind of book you're looking at, you kind of expect for there to be a story or an arc, right, or like a journey that you go on in the book, and that was something that Dick and I discussed early on as I began looking through his pictures and as we began talking with Point Blue, was one of the early imaginative processes in the book was to identify bigger themes that that run through the story of birds in this particular region, so that we could begin organizing photos around those themes, and so that I could begin writing essays that kind of mapped across those themes. So as you look through the book, you'll see it's divided into kind of 3 major sections that deal first with just this region itself, and kind of deep time and California history and geology and big natural forces that have shaped the types of birds we find here. And we have a section in the book that relates more to our human relationships with birds and how those have changed over time, from like the egg war to Point Blue conservation, data collection, very different ways of relating to birds and building relationships with birds. And kind of the final theme or like story thread that we wove into the final pages of the book was sort of looking ahead to the more complex issues that conservationists face right now. There are no easy answers, and there are stories, like Christine was saying, stories of loss and darkness, and also stories of hope and unexpected partnerships and heroes rising up in our region. And so those themes, sorry, I'm rambling a little, those themes helped kind of helped us create an arc in the book as we created essays and photos together.
I think it's worthwhile. Our main objective with the book was to sort of raise awareness. So it wasn't just to be facts. We wanted some emotion in the writing and some emotion in the photos, and we wanted it to, pull people in, and hopefully then that'll lead to people supporting the Point Blue and other organizations that are working on bird conservancy. One more question.
I see just a few raptors in this book reading through it, and I wondered if you went to Hawk Hill or worked with the Golden Gate Raptor Observatory or Bay Area Raptor.
Yeah, we didn't specifically. I've been up on Hawk Hill, but yes, that's been raised. They thought, do you not like raptors? We don't have anything against raptors, and we've got hundreds of raptor photos, but where you're trying to get all the species, I think we probably have 120 or 130 species of birds in there, and I'd guess there's probably 20 raptors in there, which is about proportionate, I think. Raptors are fun to photograph. They're striking, and the problem is getting close to them, but occasionally, you're lucky. And, yeah. Great. Well, thank you very much for coming. Thanks for your questions. Thanks for your support. We're going to be happy to go over there and sign some books for you and answer any more questions.